as soon as I hit go live, I have to reformat all of that and go from there. So that should go. All right, we're in. Everybody's in. Close enough?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, well, we're actually live. I don't see anybody viewing just yet.
Oh, there it goes. I'm like, it doesn't show you live.
It's not me yet. I got to boot up. And it's all behind there, but I'm in the frame now. Yeah, fix the beard. Cool. Well, thanks for joining me for TikTok Live, Coffee with Mike. It's all about real estate and what issues you guys run into, things you guys deal with in the industry. So we can kick it off as far as the subjects that we've kind of picked up on. Communication it's been a theme in every single one of my interviews with realtors. Communication amongst lenders, amongst other brokers, vendors. It's key, but it seems to be a pain point for everybody. What are your thoughts on the communication? What doesn't work? And then what does work? Go.
Well, I think communicating with, first of all, your customer, your client, is the most important thing, like making sure that we both understand what page we're on as far as your realtor duties. And also, once you find out exactly what they're qualified for, you don't want to show them a house that's above that, because then if they fall in love with that, you're never going to sell them a house. They've already kind of had a taste of what's really out there. So anyway, communicating with them, finding out exactly what they're qualified for, being in touch with the lender who has qualified them. Constantly, you have to be in contact with them. What do you need from me? I mean, you've gotten the purchase agreement once we've entered into a contract, and staying in communication definitely is a big plus. And then, of course, with the title company, letting them know what deadlines we have to meet, and just staying with them constantly, even if there's not a whole lot going on. We still need to let them know what's going on.
Okay.
So.
Got it. Nikki, anything to add?
No, I think that's good too. I think, communication with the other broker too is very, very good. Yeah. Because if you just hear crickets, then you're still kind of like, if you're confused, like, is this still going to close? Then imagine how your buyers are feeling or your sellers are feeling. Like, if we don't have any contact, we just need to communicate.
Well, and it keeps coming up. And I even saw an article about it this morning. People aren't picking up their phones. People aren't answering voicemails. And in this industry, I mean, yes, we can do a lot by email and by text, but I mean, if you're driving, you can't really text very well and get the detail. So, I mean, are you running into that out here where brokers are not picking up their phones? I can understand, consumer, they're not sure of the number, but in our industry, like, we have to be constantly picking up the phone. Are you running into that a lot out here?
Yes.
Okay.
I think once you submit an offer to another broker, I think you should follow up. Call them, let them know, hey, look, I'm sending you an offer. And also would follow up with a text or email, letting them know that you have submitted an offer and to look out for it. And just letting them know you've got to follow up with either a text, an email. You can't just send it and expect them to open up their email. It might go to spam. So,
or even like if you're receiving it, just to say like received or a thumbs up or an FU or something. Like, just let me know you got it,
Right. Acknowledge I've received it. I'm not going to look at it, but I've received it.
Just let me know that you got it. Okay. Otherwise, I don't know.
Very important.
Yeah.
I also know that, like, I happened to be one time, like, I had a buyer that was really interested in a house and they just had like one question. They were ready to offer on it. I called a couple of times, actually, like within a week, and never got a phone call back. And then the seller, I had posted, like on my story or something that, like, we finally found the one or whatever, kind of like browsed through the yard. Well, then the family member was like, hey, I thought you guys were gonna submit an offer on that one. Like, that was like my dad's house or something. And I'm like, well, I was going to, but like, I didn't get an answer. So we just decided to move on, And then, like, even a week later, then that broker reached out and was like, hey, I heard you had some questions. And I'm like, yeah, I did, but like, not anymore.
Like a week ago,
yeah. So it was just like, I mean, you just got to answer.
I've run into it. I've called around the country. You know, I have some buyers that we can pick up in different states, and I try to find realtors in their area. And it's astounding how many calls I make to realtors and they don't pick up.
Yeah.
Or return phone calls.
And I don't think I want to leave a voicemail when it's a random realtor, but I feel like you probably do need to pick up. And the amount of spam calls we do get probably deters us from it. But in our industry, we really have to submit it and really pick up almost every call. And then in our pre-conversation, as far as setting up for this, we were talking about interviewing your broker to get those expectations figured out.
Right.
Can you talk about that as far as knowing those expectations or interviewing the broker that you may pick as a buyer or as a seller? What are your thoughts there?
I think that it's important, like, obviously, I feel like there's a lot of realtors right now, and I think it's just important that you figure out what you want and how you want your broker to represent you.
Okay.
Because I think just because you know somebody doesn't mean that they're going to really do the best for you. Sometimes, like, a lot of people, like, refer somebody, but it's like, do you know how hard it is for us to get a hold of that person that everyone's referring? You know, like, that person never answers, or, you know what I mean? And so it's just like, I don't know, just really like pay attention to who you're hiring, make sure that they communicate with other people. And, you know, even if you're like dead stuck on Liz, like, you know, just ask around like, oh, hey, you know, like, you know, how does Liz work? Do you like working with Liz? Because somebody's like, oh no, like Liz never answers, or Liz isn't. That's good to know, right? Because just because you, like, Liz, and I'm not saying Liz,
you're just using her as
right,
a
she's
here with us. Yeah.
You know,
Liz is great.
Liz is amazing.
Awesome. She's a
Yeah,
great
Liz
gal.
is the best. She's my idol. But it's just how well they work with like little kids, you know, how well they work with others. But really, like, can you communicate? Can you keep in contact with me? Will you let me know? You know, if I send, like Liz was saying earlier, like if you send objections and we have deadlines, like what's the point of our deadlines if you're not gonna respond? You're not gonna respect these deadlines, and just like, we need some type of answer. And so I feel like when you're hiring somebody, you really need to make sure that, like, how important are you on staying on time? How important are you to communicate? Like, just ask around. I feel like that's really important to ask around, because communication is
the key.
Nothing is going to work without communication.
All keeps coming back to communication in all these interviews I've done. What was the phrase you used earlier as far as response time?
Time is of the essence.
Right.
If you have a deadline in there and you don't hear back, oh, well, I'm still waiting to see what's going on. Well, we're waiting for other offers to come in. You know, I mean, I did put a deadline in there, and, you know, I need something.
Yeah.
So I do think that once you do, you know, communicate with a realtor that you're going to decide to work with, I think they don't always know what's going to happen. So you do have to follow up and do step by step by step. You can't assume that they know, because they don't know.
Right.
And I think once you explain everything, the process and everything, even if you have to put it in writing for them, that's fine, just so they know what's going on, because they want to know every single step of the way. And so, you know, getting pre-qualified with a lender is one of the first things. You don't even want to show them until you have that pre-qual letter, you know.
Knowing what they can shop for, knowing what the limits are.
And also, again, communicating that if you, just because you're approved for $500,000, is that something you're comfortable paying, you know? Because if you're not, then let's not go look at these 500, because just because you can afford it doesn't mean that that's what you're comfortable paying. So let's not go look at those houses and then submit a low offer that we do feel comfortable paying, you know? Like, let's just stay within our budget.
Right. Be comfortable, make sure we're not regretting it later, and you know, having that understanding amongst us. Because if you get a pre-qual from a lender that says, yeah, they're good for $500,000, again, like you said, they're going to get their heart broken when they see, okay, I can qualify, but I can't fill it with furniture.
Yeah, I'm going to be house broke.
I'm going to eat ramen noodle for the rest of my life.
Married to your house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Before I jump in, do we have any comments? Can you any questions, or just people saying that his beard is horrible?
Somebody asked about a mental health facility.
That's.
I don't know. Is there a permanent mental health facility?
I haven't heard of that before. Not here locally. Yeah, no, we have a lot of great medical stuff locally. Probably great
We
services.
have a lot of
Well,
great counseling
we do.
here.
Well, I do know that Desert View
Desert View is amazing.
is one of the ones that you can definitely communicate with, and they are more than happy to open up their doors for anyone who feels like they need to talk to a counselor for whatever reason. They're there, they're great, and they have very high qualified people that you can speak with that can actually lead you in the right direction.
And that was who again? Desert
Desert View Counseling.
View Counseling.
And they are located on East Main, and they're great.
Rock and roll.
Amazing people.
Cool. All right. So just making sure we didn't miss anybody in the comments. I'm horrible about comments. Like it'll roll and I can't find them and go. So I want to check and make sure we're
I don't think
good.
so. I think that's it.
all right. We're good then.
Okay.
We're good. We're still moving on. So back to the conversation, back to communicating about not only constantly, but also time is of the essence.
Yes.
We had a point about not hesitating and calling any of the vendors, anybody involved with those questions,
Mhm.
right? If your buyer has questions, they need to talk to the broker. If the borrower has questions, they talk to the lender. If the seller has questions, like we have to ask these questions so we can understand where they're at and what they might be missing.
Right.
I mean, it breathes the idea that in my mind, it's better to deny a file early or cancel a
Mhm.
transaction early than drag it out for something we don't really know.
And cross our fingers that it works, and then we're stuck and everybody's
Absolutely.
in limbo.
Yeah, and it's like this world where everybody hopes that it's going to get done.
Yeah.
And I've read, I think the book's called "Hope Is Not a Strategy." Like you don't have time for that. We need to get the details of a transaction, and we kind of have to look past the emotions to make sure that we can get the deal done. It's not like we're robots. We feel for people, but
Mhm.
it's.
But that's the thing, is that you do feel for people, right? So you know that it's gonna be, there's so many emotions involved. I feel like when you're buying or selling a house, especially like when you're buying a house as a first time home buyer, like you're nervous to begin with, right? And so you're trusting these people to help you do all these steps. And then if it just doesn't work out, you're like, what is going on?
Right.
And so I feel like there could be anger, there could be sadness, like there can be a lot of things going on. So it's just better to figure it out first. And I don't know. And obviously, like, people make mistakes.
Sure.
It's fine. Like, stuff happens. Just own it, move on, and like, let's just keep going. You know what I mean? Like, explain the situation. Don't hide from it. I feel like whenever you know the deal is like crashing, pick up the phone and tell people like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm going to try to fix it. This is what I'm going to try to do. I will keep you posted, instead of not picking up, not texting, not responding, not answering. And then you're just leaving us here
Just
like,
avoiding the
what
whole
is going
situation.
on?
Right.
Right.
Well, and we had mentioned about newer realtors, and they're not great at contracts sometimes because they're getting into the industry. They haven't quite got all the check boxes figured out and details. And you've offered, even sometimes you're like, hey, your contract's missing some key data. Like you'll call and try to ask, but if nobody's picking up, you're not able to work it out. And so that leans into
Knowing who you hire.
right, knowing who you hire, and then that balance of you're going to fight for your side. You know, if you're representing a seller, you want to help make that seller earn as much as they can and close as soon as they're able to. And if people aren't picking up to work out the deal, it is going to benefit you better in a lot of situations,
right?
To leave things kind of blank sometimes, right?
Yeah, but if you're dealing with a newer broker, realtor, I mean, I've been in the business for a long time. I have no problem whatsoever, mentoring them, letting them know, okay, this is what needs to be done, and we'll get these things done in a timely manner. I'm going to go ahead and send you a counter. These are the things that we need to correct.
Okay.
And I honestly do not have a problem helping them because it all benefits everybody.
Right.
Buyer,
So
seller,
what do you do
and broker.
if they don't answer though?
I just am persistent, and I keep calling or texting or, and
Calling their
sometimes,
broker.
well, no, I haven't done that
You
yet.
don't call a QB for a person yet?
No.
Okay.
No, but, I do try and let them know that if there's anything that they need to, please don't hesitate to ask.
Okay.
So.
Interesting. So so in your experience, you've seen that there's probably something they're shooting for, they're going for in that contract. You're like, all right, I know you did this wrong. We can get it corrected and fixed. Right. And so you're trying to push towards that everybody gets what they're expecting. Mm-hmm. And then in our conversation and on the bigger picture, when it comes down to it, if they're just not playing ball, If they're not working with it, you're like, I have to represent my side
Right.
as much as possible. And, you snooze, you lose on answering my calls because I tried to work it out with you. That's just a tough situation. Where was I on it? So in our interview, sometimes the contracts come in unclear. And so it has to be a two-way conversation between both sides, both brokers, the buyer's broker and the seller's broker, to double check all those details. I think that was just a note I put, so little bullet points. Any thoughts from you guys? I've been rambling. I've been putting questions out there. Any thoughts from you guys? Questions yet in all of this that we've done?
No, I just think that we do need to educate sellers and buyers, because we're the professionals and they expect professionalism out of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when they do make initial contact, we don't take for granted that they know what's going on, because sometimes they're afraid to ask questions.
Sure.
And I think, that we do need to, explain bullet points exactly.
Right.
This is what's going on. This is what I intend to do. This is what we're going to do once we get an accepted contract or we enter into a listing agreement. What are you going to do after you sell your house? What are your plans? That's an important question that I think that, you need to ask your sellers if you're a listing agent. Are you planning on moving out of the area? I mean, you can hook them up with a referral, I mean, there's things that you can do to continue helping them after the sale has happened.
Well, and it comes to certain points. Like there's some properties that are only, what's we're looking for, eligible with like a conventional financing or
Right.
VA.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get a VA buyer into like a single wide,
Mhm.
yes, we got that deal closed. But if that VA buyer intends to sell that property
Right.
and move,
You always got to
Yeah.
think about resale.
right, that resale
Yes.
and the difficulty
Mhm.
of them letting go. So asking those questions on their long-term plans, not just getting the transaction
Right.
done in the moment.
Like, how long are you planning on staying here?
Right.
Just that. I mean, that's very true. Even like for a lot of the lower priced houses right
Mhm.
now, if they want to do real estate contract, like the only way that you can sell this again is probably real estate contract or cash, because it's not on permanent foundation
Right.
or it doesn't have this or whatever. So
Yeah, so prepping them for it, because you're not trying to steer them away. You're just preparing them for, hey,
You have
I
to
might
let
not be
them know.
here
Mhm.
5 years from now when you try to sell this.
Mhm.
Here's what you need to consider.
Right.
Also things like, manufactured home. We've got deactivated title. We've got the permanent foundation. We've got proof place new.
how many
which is-
times has it been moved?
And so having that paperwork in a file, keep
Mhm.
this for when you go to sell it. I hope to be your realtor when you go sell
Mm-hmm.
it. But if I retire, then you have the paperwork and we have the long-term plan figured out. So
Liz
that's
laughs because she's never gonna retire.
my understanding is most realtors never retire. They just, keep selling. But, it
Oh,
maybe
no.
one day.
I think these guys are trying to get me to retire.
You got to make room for us, okay?
No. Not ready.
Give us a chance, Liz.
We had some points. You had talked about a listing you shouldn't have taken as a broker.
Yes.
And it's one of the, just expand on that one. It was a great conversation, great anecdote.
The listing that I shouldn't have taken
Mhm.
was because, like having a conversation with the seller, like these were my expectations, what I thought this was going to be. They let me know that they were going to do some things, they were going to fix things up, a whole bunch of stuff. Well, that didn't end up happening.
Okay.
It just very, very overpriced. It wasn't what I had recommended, but I had agreed only because of the updates that was promised to be made during the time. We did get some showings. We got some feedback. I let them know, like, hey, everyone just thinks it's a little too high.
Look, actually expand on that. When you say it's overpriced, I would say a common buyer would ask that question. Well, don't you set the price? Don't you tell them the price? And that's what goes on the listing? Or is
Right.
that accurate?
No, I mean, I think we suggest a price,
Okay.
right? This is what we know the market and we know what houses are selling for compared to yours in the
Right.
area, certain stuff like that. But again, if they sit here and they tell you they're going to do a whole remodel, a whole brand new bathroom, a whole brand new roof, a whole, this and that, and it's going to look like spectacular, and I promise you, you're going to get whole new pictures and this and that or whatever.
Okay.
and then that doesn't happen, then, we go back and we have that conversation and I let them know like we should really price drop.
Okay.
And it just didn't go good. Yeah.
Okay. And that's a lot of scenarios, people say, well, why would, and they look at the realtor, why would you put it on the market like that? Like, it wasn't me. It really was the seller pushing for that price. And then this one, they let you believe it was going to get the finished work done and the updates done that would justify that price. And so you're like, okay, I could do that. But I've noticed, and it's not just here, it's nationwide. A lot of these sellers have this idea that, they're real proud of their property. And the phrase we hear is, I know what I got. Kind of thing. Yes. I mean,
well, I just always tell them like, what's important to you isn't important to somebody else, like you saw your kids grow up here, but nobody else cares, not to be rude, but like they didn't see their kids grow up here. So, I mean, unfortunately you do need to like paint over all their handprints on the wall or, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. It just doesn't have that sentimental value to the buyer that you're trying to get your house.
Right.
And I think a lot of them have emotional attachment to their properties. It was in the family forever.
Right.
And so, I think a lot of it is sometimes it's hard for them to let go. And to them, it means that much.
Right.
But to another person, like Nicole said, it may not mean as much. And so, the appraisal will say it all. Once we order the appraisal, if it doesn't come in, what are we going to do?
Right. Well, and then, but in your story, that you had plenty of showings that kind of indicated that the market said it was overpriced. So now we have, multiple people saying it's great. However,
like it has the potential. I just don't have the money to make it have that potential.
Right.
With the price I'm paying.
Why would I, as the buyer, have to justify that price and then put the money in to the renovations that need to make it that price? That makes sense. And then we finally get to a contract and the appraisal itself says flat out no. Then we're just all brokenhearted and they're mad at everybody. Excuse me.
And I think that's a conversation you have too with your sellers is like, it's got to appraise, right? Like even if they tell you they want some outrageous price and it's not that, like, I mean, it's got to appraise. And if it doesn't appraise, the lender's only going to lend of what the house is worth, or they can pay the gap, which a lot of people aren't going to do that.
Yeah. Most of the time we had that happen. I think I've had it happen once, and that was way back when prices were high and interest rates were low and people had some money. But now it's, every deal is right on a knife's edge. To your point on that, can a seller get a appraisal just to know the price and validate the value?
Yes.
I mean, is that wise to do? It's a question I get a lot. I may even get buyers like, hey, I want to get an appraisal. You got to get under contract on that house first. But what about sellers?
They can get an appraisal, but then I feel like once the seller gets an appraisal, they're stuck, right? Okay. They're stuck on that price, and I don't feel like they want to negotiate.
Is it good for and for how long?
Okay.
So these are questions. Do you really want to spend the money to get an appraisal? I mean, because we have comps that can support whatever price we suggest.
Right.
So we have access to the same comps that the appraiser has.
Right.
So I think probably I would hold off on appraisals.
Right.
Unless it's for a divorce case or anything like that.
Something justified that requires,
the judge will,
But when you're setting it up as a realtor and you're making your suggestions, by sellers who ask, hey, well, let's get an appraisal on it, it's going to be an extra cost. That appraiser might not be the appraiser that the lender gets because I can't use that appraisal.
Yeah, I always tell them too, the buyer's going to pay for their own appraisal.
Right.
So.
It's going to either justify it or not. You've done all the data to be able to make that point. Now, we talked about sellers and listings, but then Liz, you talked about the buyer's broker agreement and it needs to be explained. Can you explain it in our short time that we have?
Yes.
What it is?
The buyer broker agreement was, issued by NAR, and they're really enforcing it, especially here. I know that probably there are a few realtors out there that are still showing property. I know if it's your own listing, you probably don't have to have the buyer broker agreement, but if you do show someone else's, you do definitely have to have a buyer broker agreement. I know that our San Juan County Board of Realtors has instituted a $1,000 fine if you do not have that in place when you go to show another person's listing. There are several out there that are still doing it because I have questioned, well, we need to sign a buyer broker agreement. Well, nobody else has asked me to do that. And I'm like, well, you're going to, definitely sign one with me and and you explain it to them, that a lot of times the seller is still willing to compensate our, you guys' our compensation. Yes. They are still willing to do it. But in case they don't, there is a stipulation in here that says that you will go ahead and compensate me for being your buyer broker. Okay. So you need to explain that to them. Right. And if they feel comfortable and they want you to continue being their broker, representing them in a transaction, I think that as long as you explain it to them and what they're up against, they should feel comfortable with you explaining it to them. But you can't just, email it to them and expect them to sign it. And then, the other broker is saying, oh, yeah, well, my seller isn't willing to compensate. Right. Well, then surprise, you don't want any surprises. No. You want to be upfront and honest with them.
Well, and that's the thing is if it's not really understood or known that the buyer would be covering the buyer's broker compensation, I as a lender have to take that in consideration because we have down payment, closing costs, other fees.
As a lender, have you had to had buyers that had to compensate?
I've seen a couple.
Have you built it into the purchase agreement, or is it something that they would have to come up with at closing?
Nope, it's something they have to come in with closing. If we build it into the purchase agreement, typically it's the seller.
So I was just going to say, so is it how does that work? Is that something separate, or is it because it's not like part of your seller concessions, right?
No, it can be. When NAR changed their rules, all the other government guidelines pivoted with it. Okay. So that way it could be included. So we know FHA, their top seller concession is 6%. FHA doesn't technically have one on paper. So that one's easier to work through, but FHA and Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, with them, they have limits on how much a seller can contribute. So we have to look at that side of it all and say, if the seller is going to give us a concession of this much, can we just build it into the purchase price and have the seller pay both sides of the parties? And that's where communication is key, is where we talk about, okay, how do we make this work? Right. How do we balance this out? Because a lot of times people think, well, we'll just roll it into the purchase price. You can't sometimes because the seller doesn't like that idea, or we have to bump the purchase price up, or we run into the issue where the appraisal value doesn't cover it as well. So it's a whole mess of conversation we have to have way early on, so that way everybody's aware. Right. And I've noticed that a lot of sellers, they look at it going, well, why are you taking advantage of me? Why are you getting into my profit when I just have the house? And we have to have those conversations early. So that way we don't get to the last minute and say, well, by the way, you're coming in with part of your broker's compensation because the seller didn't cover enough. And we have to be real prepared for that. And I think people get nervous. Like people get shy about asking for dollars. And I've looked at it, and closing costs in total have just kept creeping up on everything. And it's not like anybody's like making any more. It's just insurance has got more expensive. Right. Taxes are going up. It's just getting ugly out there. So it goes back to that communication is key, and saying, hey, this may not be the deal for you. Right? We have you pre-qualified at $500,000, but this deal at $300,000 is actually going to be worse for you because of how much you're going to come in with it all. And those are hard conversations to have because people might fall in love with the house and then you feel like a bad guy. But like you said, looking at the end result, the long term of how it's going to go. So, well, we're coming quick on our time. I don't see any more comments that came up with it. Any other final thoughts from you guys? Any other things that we can point to?
I don't think so.
No, I just think that as long as you are in constant communication with your customer, your client, the other broker, the title company, your lender, I think that, if you need to CC a coordinator or whatever, that's so important just to keep everybody on the same page. Right. And if there's an issue that comes up, immediately let the other people know.
Right.
And I'm like notorious for making group chats because I'm like, everyone's going to be on the same page. Group chats everyone's going to be accountable, like, because I don't like the blame game.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like, oh, well, I didn't get this part from this person, or, you know, I'm waiting on the listing agent, or I'm waiting on this. So then I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, I already sent that. So then I'm like, all right, like, who's laying here? Like, let's just figure out what's going on.
Right. Let's get to the
What's
next
the problem?
milestone. It
Yes.
doesn't matter whose fault it is. Let's get to that next
Mhm.
milestone so we can move on with our
Let's
lives.
all be on the same page. We're all trying to work together.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate your time. This
You're
was
welcome.
great
Thank you.
details. I mean, it's been 30 minutes. It
Wow.
went super fast.
It did.
So, if you guys have any more thoughts? Oh, look, Shaylin says that Nicole is the best.
Oh yes, she just sold her a house.
Yes.
Well, thank you so
One
much,
of my
guys.
listings.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being here with us. And if you guys need anything else, it's way over there. Holy cow. It's way over there. If you need anything else, reach out with some questions. We'll post some clips on this online as well. And we look forward to seeing you.
Yes.
Now I never turn it off while it's live. Super awkward. Go away. In and out.